Hello, and welcome to my Fire Emblem 9 Path of Radiance 100% gross hard mode low turn count playthrough. I'm your host Typhoon Carter, and today I'm joined by Mekkah.
Hey, what's up? Glad to be here.
Yeah, so today we got Chapter 23, and Chapter 23, it's a map, it's a bridge map, and it's a map that's notorious for having pitfalls in there.
Oh, that's why I'm here. Oh, right. Yeah, Pitfalls. Pitfall's good. Pitfall's funny. Fallen things.
Classic.
Struggle.
Anyways, first and foremost, but before we can even get into that, we got a little bit of prep work to do here in the base. And we're gonna head to Forge like we always do. And we're making a Steel Lance Forge here, and we're putting max crit on it. And we're gonna call this Steel Lance Forge TLP.
That's another funny thing. DLP. I'm glad you put funny thing in funny chapter.
Of course. You might have noticed that silver lances are actually available for forging in this chapter. But while we're BEXPing this, I guess I can maybe talk about why we didn't forge a silver lance. This is because Marcia basically falls a little bit short of actually being able to kill the boss of this chapter, and I realized that we could save a little bit of gold for now, which is ironic given gold is usually not a problem in Path of Radiance.
Yeah, I've generally found that there's a way to, even if the game gives you 1,000,000 gold, you can still find a way to waste it when you have forges available. I actually had a similar experience to you, I think for different reasons in my Iron Man, where I would not forge silver because it just didn't have as many uses, and I found that as long as I have a one-range forged weapon, it would generally kill the things I would need to. So I just didn't want to forge silver because it's like more money for less uses. I didn't want that. That was my reasoning anyway.
Yeah. No, that makes sense too, and it would sound weird because like enemies in Path of Radiance are known to be fairly bulky.
Yeah, they really are. I've always found it like almost a waste to equip one to range against a lot of enemies because they just wouldn't kill anything, even if it's like Jill using a hand axe.
Yeah.
So instead, I would just like equip one range and just forget about the two range enemies, just kill them on player face instead. But
yeah,
that's like very different context from your playthrough, I'm sure.
Yeah, don't worry. I experience similar problems of not being able to kill stuff with Marcia sometimes, even with her strength cap, which is very depressing.
Yeah, how much is it again?
23.
Ooh, that is
really low.
My condolences for your strength cap. I'm very sorry to hear that. That's so unfortunate.
Unfortunate. And
I guess that's the one thing you can't fix with BEXP, am I right?
Yeah, it's tough. But Oscar also finally gets to promote after God knows how long.
This guy's literally been here since chapter 1, and you only just promoted him now.
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't have many Master Seals to go around in this game. And a lot of them come very late, unfortunately. Yeah,
well, you promoted him at level 21, right? He's best on level. You can master. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like almost every unit basically has to promote at like level 21 with the way the game's structured.
Yeah, it makes sense to pick axes because like what else are you gonna pick unless you wanted to triangle attack? I was gonna say I assume like BEXP was like in reasonably high demand for you because you had to BEXP up Jill and Marcia to become really good really quickly.
I also had to BEXP Soren like very early on in the playthrough. Like I had to stockpile a lot of those just to get just to show like back in chapter 9. And Tanith here also giving her some BEXP because we need her stats to be a little bit higher to kill stuff a little bit better.
Yeah, it's funny because Tanith is one of those units you think of when you think of like really good bases, especially for like the time when they come.
Yeah.
But you know, 100% growth, low turn count is very demanding, and even a unit with like reasonably good bases is still going to look incompetent compared to like Jill and Marcia getting 100% growth level ups all the way through.
Yeah, and basically getting spoon fed a lot.
Yeah, I bet even Mist is like competitive with Tanith stat wise because she's also in BEXP.
Yeah, but Mist's purposes for promotion is very different, or they do different things, more or less. I'll just say that. And Rhys, we're just promoting. He's gonna also get Master Sealed as well. And here, it's gonna be ironic because Miss will have a somewhat decent strength stat, which you will never see in the normal playthrough most of the time.
Yeah, Mist is usually like memed as like a Sonic Sword user who
Yeah.
like needs 2 arm scrolls and a bunch of BEXP to get to anywhere near reasonable competent offense. And then
Yeah.
here it's like, well, just Rick
No big
growth
deal.
instead of Lamau.
No big deal. You know.
Just hack your Nintendo PC to get 100% growth. Easy, problem solved. I don't know why everyone is like having so much trouble with this.
But yeah, so anyway, so Mist's promotion, she promotes into Valkyrie, and Valkyrie, it's a bit of a strange promotion because typically Valkyries can use magic, but instead here she uses swords and staves.
Yeah, I think Mist's promotion might be based on like the good old female paladin promotions.
Yeah.
Tellius in a lot of ways is based on Juke Troll, where there's no Valkyrie class. It's just
Yeah,
it's like they're promoted the female paladins. Troubadours do, and I think this is a reference to that.
yeah. But I would also think it's like kind of a balanced decision that IS made. That's my other guess, considering they...
You mean like compared to Rhys?
In a way, yeah. Like just to keep Rhys from being completely quote-unquote outclassed, but I say quote-unquote, but you know. But Rhys here, he's still gonna be handy because he has a decent base Hammer staff, and in the normal playthrough he can be a decent rescue user. And here we give Marsha Shade. Now the reasoning for this is because back in chapter 16 I could not get the full guard, and I need Marcia actually to avoid some enemies from outright attacking her.
Yeah, the idea is basically like she can already survive with some luck, but this just requires less luck, right? Because enemies that could target Marcia instead once they go for other units you have.
Yeah, and also because Marcia has some killing troubles, so like for the rest of the playthrough she won't fight as frequently. So that's the other reasoning.
Yeah, but we did talk about this a little bit. Shade is very inconsistent though, right? It's not like something you can rely on to work because the enemy AI is like super fickle. We don't even know 100% what it does.
Yeah.
The most credible rumor I've heard, when I'm using this very loosely, the word credible, is that it makes the enemy think that even if you have one to range equipped that you don't counter, basically. So like enemies think you do counter them. That's what they think.
Yeah.
And so they will go for you less often, but they still go for you sometimes. Like Marcia's still going to get attacked every now and then.
Yeah, I think it also depends on some enemies. Types have different AIs that might ignore it outright or operate a little differently, from what I understand. And we also did get the Hammer, which will be very handy next chapter, and will be handy for the rest of the playthrough. And we're just doing some last-minute shopping before we go into the chapter.
Yeah, I'm assuming that silver lances are not on sale next chapter. The armor keeps varying.
Yeah, they vary every chapter, more or less. And the silver sword's just nice for Tanith to hit some one-round KO benchmarks. And funnily enough, I actually did this because during a trial run I realized Tanith fell just short of certain benchmarks, so I had to go do that. Anyways, so this map, you know, it's, as we mentioned before, there's like pitfalls in this map, and the player usually won't be able to know where they are, although on this map there are some hints that the player would be able to deduce as to where some of the pitfalls are.
Yeah, I think the first hint that you see is just that enemies just refuse to walk over them. So sometimes you're like right in their range, or as far as the enemy range says you're in range, and they just don't move for you, which can either mean the enemy just doesn't move, or there's a pitfall in the way and they just don't want to move over it because they don't want to fall down. They will never go into a pitfall by themselves.
Yeah.
You can, as far as I know, shove people into pitfalls though, which is very funny.
Yeah.
And the other hint would be, generally, like if you see a spot and you're like, okay, this would be really annoying if there's a pitfall here. Chances are there's a pitfall there. There's usually a pitfall in really annoying spots.
Yeah, we gotta get a big shove chain set up here first because we're gonna need Marcia to kind of carry Ike fairly far into enemy territory. And because some of the ballistas on here, they actually have a decent base might. And in the normal playthrough where the player would have the full guard, you normally won't think of the ballistas as much of a threat, but in the case of this run, they can be a threat, which is why we had Shade put on Marcia.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if I recall, I don't think there's any other ballistas in the game besides this chapter, as far as I recall.
There's chapter 25, Eat Rock
Oh,
map.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant like, oh, I'm sorry, I meant like before this chapter.
Oh,
so
yeah.
this is the first time you like encountered them.
I think chapter 19 had them, but like it was a very trivial one turn, so didn't get shot at too much.
Okay. Anyway, I guess I just wanted to bring up that they don't use strength. They don't like crossbows and Radiant Dawn. So
Yeah.
they just have a lot of might, but the guy that's on it is just irrelevant. They just shoot the ballista, which,
Yeah.
you know, in a way that makes sense. Why should the strength impact anything with the ballista?
Yeah. Although in this game it's ×2 effective, so it's not nearly as punishing as it would be in the sequel.
Well, yeah, for sure. Crossbows are infinitely more punishing than ballistas are, for sure. I remember, especially with Jill, because of her high defense, she really just doesn't care about ballistas, even if you forget to put the full guard on her sometimes. So what you could do is put the full guard on Marcia or Tanith, and then Jill still can go in enemy territory and not care too much about ballistas.
Yeah. Yeah, Jill's bulk is fairly good, but anyways, here, so we had Marsha kind of hug this wall sort of thing, so that she didn't get completely trapped, as some of the enemies will move kind of weirdly, as we've alluded to earlier.
Yeah, they don't want to go into pitfalls, and sometimes enemies just move really weirdly. Period. I'm not sure what exactly you're referring to, but that's been my general noticing with Path of Radiance is enemies have weird movement patterns. And my favorite is that enemies that have Kanto really love using Kanto, even if it doesn't make sense. They just really want to show off that they have it. So, for example, I think there's going to be a Cavalier that might have already moved that could trap Marcia in place if he just like stayed where he was after he attacked. But because they have this super big urge to Kanto always, they will Kanto away anyway.
Yeah, no, they'll just like Kanto like one move for no reason because spectacular programming.
I mean, I think the idea might be that they want to move away from you a bit so that other enemies that also have Kanto, like they let little horses gang up on you, basically, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, there's one example of that, as we are noticing right now. And Marcia, unfortunately, is very neutered here. We had Marcia equip a weaker weapon. This is just for the purposes of the enemies not getting healed, as there are some physic bishops on this map.
Oh yeah, that's like the other kind of underrated reason that Path of Radiance takes so long, I think, is that enemies will not only die in multiple hits, multiple rounds of combat, but they also often run back to get healed by the ever-present enemy bishops.
Yeah, and here we drop Ike off, and Ike has his Sonic Sword equipped, and this is so that Ike has 1 to 2 range, and so that he can handle the enemies. One thing to note on Maniac mode is that Ike would actually not be able to 1-round KO some of the enemies on Maniac because they're just that fat, even at capped out magic.
Yeah, that's really insane if you think about it, because this is 100% growth, so Ike has been getting magic every single time. I think one of the funniest parts of 100% growth is how good magical one-to range weapons are, and I think it's a good example of why it was like smart to hoard the Sonic Sword all the way to this chapter, because you've had it ever since Tanith joined, I believe, and it's very tempted to use it every now and then. Yeah,
it is extremely tempting, and we do burn for a lot of uses. And meanwhile, we have Tanith here get rid of this mage who has a blizzard. That blizzard tome is going to be a very nice toy for Soren to use later on in the run.
Yeah, Path of Radiance is surprisingly generous. Telly's in general is surprisingly generous with like giving you long-range tomes. I think you get like 2 or 3 books of like these long-range tomes in each of these games for free, and you can just use them with a lot of your free sages.
Yeah, and also the other thing that should be noted is that the weapon rank requirements to use these weapons are fairly generous compared to other games. In Path of Radiance, the rank to use siege tomes are generally C rank, whereas in other games like the GBA FEs or even like Juke Draw, it's like B or A rank normally.
Yeah, I think even in like Radiant Dawn, the sequel, it's actually like B rank to use bolting, it's C rank to use meteor, and C rank to use blizzard.
Yeah. And
it's pretty good.
Yeah, although unfortunately magic in general tends to get extremely neutered in Tellius for a variety of reasons. Such as mages just having like the same move as armor knights.
Yeah, that part was very unfortunate. I can see why they did it, because innately magic is so scary, right? Because it's unconditional 1-2 range that hits on res. That seems really good in theory, and then they looked at all those traits set in especially Radiant Dawn.
Yeah.
They nerfed every single one of those traits into the ground. They like gave enemies much more res and everything.
Yeah.
And also made the mages themselves weak. The tome's bad. Everything else about it is just
and they also made their caps a lot worse. Like just even like tier 2 and tier 3 caps in general, they're very underwhelming.
Yeah, although that does come with his blessing. Yo, Tanith dodges the ballista.
Yeah.
How crucial is that?
Yeah. Tanf luckily was able to afford to take a hit there. Although if Tanf did get hit there was a chance the other ballista would have targeted her, and she might have had a slight chance of death.
Yeah, I don't have the numbers on hand, but I do believe that will be a 2th KO on Tanith. Although she got a couple of like HP defense level up positions, maybe she barely survived. I don't know. I don't play this game anymore.
No, Tanf would have gotten to it KO with like the way the ballista's like innate might are. It's just too high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and here we watch Ike proccing unnecessary Aether procs, which can be a mixed bag. And here, so the ballistas here, as I mentioned before, they it's very inconsistent whether or not they target Marcia, as there's times where they don't, and there's times when I did trial runs where they did.
Might be a dumb question. Did that guy even use his ballista? Because it looked like he was using like a longbow or something.
No, he actually used his ballista. Like the ballista like just turned around, like just went a full 90-degree turn. I was like, oh yeah, let's just swing this bad boy and just.
I was like,
shot right there.
Did I see that right? What the hell did you do, Mr. Archer? What the hell?
Yeah, no, yeah, and this game's insistent on showing off their awesome map animations.
Mm-hmm. I do really appreciate just how good the Sonic Sword here is, though, because I think it's tempting to try and not use it as long as possible, like even hoard it even further.
Yeah.
And then, but in this chapter, I feel like you'd almost always get stuck behind the enemies, right? Because there's too much once you're range, just too many that just wouldn't die and get in the way.
Yeah, and the other thing is that like if it wasn't for Sonic Sword, all of our units would probably be getting trapped, and they would have like basically no wiggle room to move. As some of our units are a bit too weak, per se, to actually kill.
Funny. Even with 100% growth, enemies is too strong.
They're just too fat. And then, yeah, here we also watch Shade do really funny things. Like enemies doing friendly fire.
He just targets his friend. I have seen him do it before when they can like hit when my units are like in a diamond formation around an enemy, they'll just target the enemy too, but that was funny. I will admit.
Yeah. That's like, what's friendly fire? We don't know what that is.
Yeah. I mean normally obviously in Fire Emblem you can't actually friendly fire, but I think with the thing onagers, I think is what they're called.
Yeah,
they can target squares instead of units.
They do AoE
so
damage.
Yeah.
I don't know if Meteor would have the same effect in Fury and Free Houses.
I think with Meteor you literally just have at least in 3 houses, I think you have to literally target an enemy that you can target, and then whoever's around takes damage. So it's like an AoE attack, but you have to target an enemy. It's not like the Onager, as far as I know.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of like other instances where you actually have to target a square like that. I can only think of like...
I think there was 313 in Radiant Dawn where like some of the... They might do weird things. And speaking of Radiant Dawn, ironically they brought this god-awful map back.
Hey, don't insult this map. This map is brilliant. Shut your mouth. This map is brilliant.
Right, it's the pinnacle of game
Pitfall,
design.
it's your fault.
Pinnacle of game design, although the way the map is laid out is vastly different, because like in the sequel they would start out on the other side per se. You're basically going the other way around.
Yeah, I think it makes sense geographically, because I think you're going from Crimea to Dayan, as far as I remember.
And then in the case of Path of Radiance, you're going from Dayan to Crimea.
Yep.
And we haven't really talked about the boss Petrine here. Petrine, one of the 4 riders, she comes with a Flame Lance, and the Flame Lance is a magical 1-2 range weapon.
Those suck. I never used those.
Yeah, but they do deal effective damage against Beast Lagu's units. Although, the other thing is that Petrine's stats are actually surprisingly high for a boss, especially her speed. And if it weren't for 100% gross, like, some units might actually have trouble doubling her. I think, funnily enough, I think Stefan at like base Stefan actually barely misses out on doubling Petrine. Just to give a reference point of how fast she is.
Yeah, I remember her like being particularly dodgy. Something else that I think might be good to mention at this point, or sometime soon, is that the reinforcement structure of this map is almost the same as Radiant Dawn, which is the fact that they have a couple vertical lines on the map that you can cross at any point, and once you do, that will trigger a set of reinforcements that come up. I think from this map, it's almost always the back part of the map where reinforcements comes from, and in Radiant Dawn, there's like a couple other different things it can trigger. There's like an event with like Tabarn and Lian, for example. They kept that the same in both incarnations. I think it's funny in this case particularly because I think he crossed every single line on turn 1, if not by turn 2. Whereas usually they're a bit more staggered than that.
Yeah, and the other thing is that normally in this map there would also be quote-unquote some green units that show up to give a hand. But we're clearing this map fast enough where they won't really matter. And speak of the devil.
Hey, hello, what's up? Glad you're here every time.
Yeah, every time. We have to. Petrine is fairly bulky, and unfortunately, I have to rig a critical with Marcia in order to kill Petrine.
It's okay. This divine lightning shall pierce Petrine.
Yeah, she couldn't handle such edge. And we get the flame lance for all our troubles. And here. Funnily enough, when I was doing a mock session, Tanith actually got critted by this killer bow. And then, I kind of just sat there in a solace for about 10 minutes, trying to think about what just happened.
Also, one enemy phase, gotcha.
One enemy phase. Thank God this isn't Clash yet.
Oh yeah, I mean that'll come up soon. Anyway, one of the reinforcements waves does have a recruitable character in Har, which is I think that might be the reason why you're not using Jill for all this stuff, because she might have been more reliable.
Yeah, Jill would have been much nicer, but Jill was kind of forced to stay behind so that we can actually recruit Har, which is unfortunate because if you're like doing incomplete recruitment, although to be fair, in incomplete recruitment you would most likely also be skipping Jill. It's just unfortunate that Jill can be doing more in this map than we would like.
I mean, what would you have her do if she was available? Like if you didn't need to get Har?
I would have her be a distraction, and I would also have her get rid of some of the ballistas, just so they wouldn't be targeting Marcia.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
Oh well, instead she gets the Brave Axe for you.
Yeah, the Brave Axe is gonna be real nice to help some of our units like Kieran make up for any one-round KO benchmarks that they may normally not be able to make.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds impossible because, 100% growth, but sometimes there's like a really tough enemy or something, really weird thing you want them to do.
Yeah. And it's a reoccurring theme in this game, but enemies are just way too fat, and thankfully IS sort of mellowed out on that. Who am I kidding? No, they didn't.
I mean, at least shoutouts to Soren for being so strong that he can still get through these fat enemies now with his capped out magic. And
Rip Boy just completely fallen off into irrelevancy. But anyways, that is chapter 23 cleared in 3 turns. I'll see you guys next time for chapter 24. Bye bye.
See ya.